So here, we're going to talk about a card sort, and we're just going to decide could each possible number be a possible input or an output. So we're going to look at the area of a square in centimeters, and its side length is the input. So the side length is the input, and then we're going to look at impossible inputs based on this. So what I'm going to do is record on here possible inputs and B, impossible. And possible inputs for here are going to be in our domain. And impossible inputs are not in the possible domain. So on here, we're just going to look at this top card and see, are these possible inputs for the side length of a square? So could I have a square with a side length of -3? Well, no, that's impossible. Side lengths have to be positive. What about 25 over 4? Well, that could be put into decimal form. So I could just go here, 25 divided by 4. Could I have a square with a side length of, say, 6.25 inches? Yeah, so that is possible. What about 3/5 of an inch or centimeter? Yeah, that's okay. 15 centimeters? Sure. 0.8 centimeters? I mean, it'd be hard to cut, but yeah. 4 centimeters? Yep, no problem. 0 centimeters. Technically, to make a square, you'd have to have a side length. So I'm going to put that as 0 because that wouldn't actually make a square. What about 9 centimeters? Yep. 1/1000th. So, I mean, theoretically, you could do that with a computer drawing tool, but physically making that, I'm going to put that in the impossible. Like, no one could draw that or cut that out. -18. Again, side lengths can't be negative, so that's impossible. Having 6.8 centimeters, sure. And having 72 centimeters, sure. Now, if you want to, go ahead and try these. I'm sorry, they're the same. So we're going to look at another set of possible inputs. So tennis camp charges $40 per student for a camp. The camp runs only if at least 5 students sign up, and it limits the enrollment to 16 campers per day. The amount of revenue in dollars that the tennis camp collects is a function of the number of students. So it looks like from the revenue function, they're collecting $40 per student. So we're looking at the possible inputs. So for tennis camp, if we look at the inputs or the domain, again, domain is our fancy math word for that. It has to be between 5, at least 5, and up to 16. So we could say our domain here is between 5 and 16. So we have X is between 5 and 16 students. So that's one way to put that as an inequality, meaning you can be somewhere between 5 and 16 people. And you can also put that in like set notation. So we can say our interval is between 5 and 16. These brackets mean you can have 5 people and you can have 16. If you couldn't, you just put parentheses. So now as we go back through, we just say, are inputs possible or impossible? So what we do is just look at our numbers here. So -3 is not possible. 25 over 4, well, that leaves us a fraction. Remember when we converted that? we had 6.25. You can't have 6.25 people, so that's not a possible input. You have to have strictly an integer or whole number between 5 and 16.
Good morning, students and staff. Please pardon the interruption.
So now as we look for more inputs, you could not have 3/5 of a person, so that's impossible. As I look, our next number here is 15. So that is a possible input. So I'm going to write 15. Here, 0.8, that doesn't work, but 4 does. So I'm going to put 0.8 as an impossible input. But 4 people, I'm sorry, actually doesn't. We have to have 5 or more. So that 4 is not possible either. 0 doesn't work. 9 does. And 0.001 also doesn't work. So I'm going to put 9 for possible, 0 for impossible, 0.001 for impossible. Negative 18 doesn't work, 6.8 doesn't work, and 72 does not work. So I'm going to put negative 18, not between 5 and 16. 6.8 does not work because you can't have 6.8 people. And 72 is greater than 16. So what I'm going to have you guys do now is try this, read this function, go through your table, and list it as, is it a possible input or an impossible input? So I'm going to pause the video, let you guys try that, and then I will place my answers on here so you can check. So again, here's the question. So to look through these, typically temperatures are reported to the nearest degree. So for the possible inputs, I put -3, 15, 4, 8, 9, -18, and 72. And for impossible, I put the decimal numbers, 25 over 4, 3 over 5, 0.8, 0.001, and 6.8. You might have put like 6.8 and some of the other ones as possible, which is fine. Technically, if you had technology that could measure the temperature to the nearest, say, 100th or 1,000, that would be okay to have it be possible. But I put typically here are the possible inputs that you would have to output the temperature from Celsius to Kelvin.